Okay, this is September the 8th, 2022 at 6:36, and I call this meeting to order. I will do roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Villalobos.
Here.
Councilmember Bunker.
Here.
Councilmember Styler.
Here.
Councilmember McLeod is absent. Councilmember Clinton.
Here.
And I am Mayor Glaze. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And for the Texas flag, honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. And for the invocation. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, Lord God, thank you so much for the rain. And Lord God, thank you for the gift of salvation. Lord God, as we go forth and go through this budget tonight, we just ask that you give us wisdom and discernment. And we just pray this in your Son's name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. We will open the public hearing. And this is an opportunity for the citizens of Martindale to have their say about the upcoming proposed budget.
All right. So we have a couple people online, so we don't have anybody here in person. We'll present the information for the benefit, and if they have any questions, feel free to unmute yourselves and state your name and your question. So tonight we're going to review the fiscal year 2022, 2023 budget and tax rate.
Share your screen.
The City of Martindale budget consists of a few different funds. The general fund, which incorporates normal city operations, the utility fund, which includes wastewater and solid waste services, a special revenue fund that we use to manage all restricted use revenues and expenses are mandated by law or policy. And then we have a grant / community development fund that we use for grant funded operations. Those budgets for the grant community development fund is project based. It's not included in our annual budget setting process. For example, the North Russell Road project is managed out of that fund for the most part. Sorry about that, a little fast. So I'll start off with what's most front of mind for people is the proposed property tax rate for this next year. In 2021, I want to kind of speak off of the right-hand side of the slide, where you see a couple of tabs with different numbers and rates. Starting on the far right, the 2021 rate, that's the current tax rate that's in effect, based off of the appraised values of properties within the city of Martindale. If we retain that same rate going on forward to this next year, it would generate revenues of $424,613. However, that revenue increase would not be allowable under state law without voter approval. State law restricts municipalities from increasing their revenues from property taxes by more than 3.5% from the prior year. And that's known as the voter approval rate, which is signified there in the middle at 0.3601 per $100. And that would generate a total revenue amount of $368,960 in revenue. The no new revenue rate, shown in blue, is 34.74. That no new revenue rate would keep the same revenue generated from last year, plus any new properties that have been added to the rolls. So that would result in revenue of $358,267. So reason for presenting this is so that city council and the public understand where the proposed tax rate that will be considered after the conclusion of the public hearing. The proposed tax rate is the same as the voter approval rate, which would generate $10,984.95 more in revenue, more than last year's budget amount, which is a 3.09 increase from last year's budget. Of that, the property tax revenue to be raised from new property added to the tax rolls is $2,861.91. So shorthand, it's about an $8,000 increase on properties in total aggregate for the city, that the city is going to collect $8,000 more from property owners who had property from last year. So I'll go on to the next slide, which will kind of describe how that works and where those funds are used. So
I had a quick question though about that. You said that the rate, I think it was 0.34 to 3.6, and it would generate that much more. But the appraisals, I mean, how does the increase in appraisals that have been so drastic, how does that affect the increase in the taxes, or why doesn't it appear that the money received from the property taxes is not very much more, considering the appraisals correspondingly have gone up so much?
So if we kept the same tax rate on their prior appraisals, we would generate almost a little less, about $55,000 more in revenue from last year to this year, just based on those increased appraisals. However, in order to collect that additional amount, it would have to be put forward to a vote. And city council previously proposed a tax rate that did not require voter approval. And so what we're doing is we're reducing the rate burden while the appraised value is going up. Those are the two components. If you're a property owner, you pay property taxes. The two components that impact how much you pay is one, the appraised value multiplied by the tax rate. The tax rate's going down, the appraisal's going up. We're meeting at the voter approval rate and not collecting as much. So your property tax will still go up, but not to the degree that your appraised value went up.
Because the rate is going down from 0.42 to proposed rate of 0.36.
So here's another way of looking at it.
3-4.
So here's another way of looking at it. The top of this next slide, which discusses where your property taxes go, it shows the amount of taxes paid per $100,000 of property value in fiscal year 21, 22, and 23. You'll see the amount of taxes paid per $100,000 over the last 3 years actually extends beyond that. I think it's for the last 6 budget cycles at least. That amount paid per $100,000 property value has actually gone down by almost $80 per $100,000 property value. So if your property value didn't change over the last 3 years, you'd be paying less taxes. However, that wasn't the case for, I don't think most, if not all, property owners within the city of Martindale or anywhere else. Property values have gone up. So in a hypothetical, say you're in a strange world, last year your property was assessed at a value of $100,000. You paid $426 in property taxes. If your property value doubled this year, and now you pay, and now your property was assessed at $200,000, you would pay 360 times 2. It would be $720 out in property taxes. So your taxes still went up. Still went from 426 to 720 in this hypothetical scenario. However, what it did not do is the 426 didn't double. You're not paying $850, dollars for that double in value. You're only paying 720. So the tax rate we're setting is lessening the effects of those appraised value increases, which were quite substantial this last year.
Yeah, some of the values have gone up 101% in the last five years.
Yeah.
I had, my piece went up 101% in the last 5 years, so it's amazing. The appraised value.
So where those, unless there's any more discussion on how the tax rates are calculated, where do those property taxes go and how it's split up within the budget? I think this is an interesting slide for people to know, where's my money go? 66% of each dollar that you pay in property taxes goes to personnel costs for the city. 28% of that dollar is spent on contracting services. And then about roughly 7%, a little less than 7%, is on other operating expenses and other things. Within personnel, the city's personnel costs, about half is within the police department. 43% is the administrative staff, myself, city clerk, our accountant, and then 8% is personnel cost is allocated to the court. In the contract services, it's a little more broken out. Again, it's the professional services, engineers, auditors, attorney. Those of the 28% that's paid on contract services, 31% is used on professional services. Law enforcement, library, IT, and roads, you'll see it depicted there as well. On roads, we spend money out of our general fund on roads, but we also have another separate fund that we use for road maintenance as well.
Did you say code enforcement? That's in admin, I think.
Yeah, code enforcement is mostly a administrative personnel expense. That'd be part of the 66% of your dollar.
I just need, it's in the admin section,
Yes. Yeah.
under police.
So doesn't any of the money from the court fines or the tickets and all that, doesn't some of that cover any of the court costs that are not, that it looks like 8% of it is court and it's covered all by property taxes, and some of the money generated by the court fines paying for the court?
So there are certain revenue streams that are generated by court activities that are part of the restricted fund. Property taxes go within the general fund. This is showing you a depiction of if you, of all general fund expenses, here's the breakout of where those areas fit. So you can get a comparison of, dollar for dollar where that's being spent. So if you spend, if you provided, you paid $1,000 in property taxes, about $660 of that 1,000 goes to the police force, administrative, and court. To break that further, of that $1,000, about $330 went to the police department.
Thank you.
And again, if anybody online has any questions or comments on this information, just feel free to state your name and your question. And we'll keep it moving. Here's getting into the actual dollar figures of what's in the general fund balance. This is looking at the summary of revenue and expenses. I want to focus all the way on the right-hand side of the screen, where in that teal color, the 2023 proposed budget. You'll see we've budgeted for $618,000 and change in revenues, and we've budgeted $618,000 in expenses. So our budget is on balance. We're not budgeting for a deficit or any sort.
And that reflects more money generated by the municipal court, 5020, from 60 to.
Yeah, and we're going to get into,
105?
yes, you're right. As you're looking at the 2022 budget numbers under revenue 5020, 60,000, and comparing it to this next budget, yes, it's gone up. And we'll get into those specifics on each fund, on most of the fund items that's on the following slides. Starting now. So this is a year-over-year historical look at 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 20 actuals, 2022 in the yellow is a projected number. Those projections are constantly being updated. We're discussing right before the meeting. In fact, our property tax collected to date has since increased since this slide was built. So the 2022 projected, for example, in property taxes is now 353 instead of the 345 that's depicted there. The blue number is the proposed budget. So you can see how over the course of time, these different general fund revenue areas have varied. On the issue of municipal court, as brought up, council member, is our budget for this year is actually returning to the historical norm in 2018, 2019, which was prior to COVID and prior to staffing shortages that we had in filling out the police department with part-timers and other issues that we fell on us. So that 105, though a marked increase from last couple of years, is actually returning back to a historical norm, and it's making the assumption now that we're staffed at the highest staffing level that we've had in 5 years going into this next fiscal year in terms of number of man hours in our police department. That's I think that's, it might even be a conservative assumption depending on how active they are in their traffic patrols and how that generates down the line.
But we're still held by the Selma law because of our population.
Yeah. So what you're referencing is only, I think it's no more than 20% of the city's annual budget can come from municipal court revenues, traffic riding, if you will. We're nowhere close to that. Our total budget, all funds considered, I think we're just shy of $1 million. So if we're doing 100,000, we have
10%.
I thought the percentage was higher.
33%.
30 something.
33.
Yeah. The point is, I'm not concerned, the city shouldn't be concerned, that we have no reason, we'll put it this way, there's no reason to be concerned right now that we would breach that.
Right, yeah. No, I was just asking if it was still a concerning, no, it isn't concerning, but that it's still an effectual law or whatever.
We'll point out that on the sales tax side, you can see how it was going up and then dipped down. That's an effect of accounting for the sales tax that's generated specifically for street and road maintenance being managed under a special revenue fund, no longer than general fund. So that's the sales tax in total, including both the street and road fund and the general fund, it's actually gone up over time. But the reason why you see it go down here from 2020 to 2022 and 2023 is because we're managing those funds separately. Make sure that we're using them appropriately. Any other questions on general fund revenues? Any questions from the public?
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to talk about it, that 170,000 that we got from the COVID thing.
Yeah, right now, those are not being budgeted within our fiscal year budgets. Those are being managed out of our community development grant fund.
Oh, okay.
Or not community development,
Okay.
community development fund or
The long-term
ARPA
development.
fund.
Right.
So those are budgeted based on project.
Okay.
So we'll have a project budget for the use of those funds.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
To do it? Well, in one meeting, I forget which fund it's called, the emergency fund, we said that we did it, and I forget how much we're contributing to it. You might, Dwayne might know.
Yeah, it's like 15,000 a year we were putting in it. I don't know if that was a percentage or a number, but
Yeah, we
we.
Our goal was within 5 years to get to $250,000.
And we're almost there.
We're getting close.
We're like 20,000 off, I
Right.
think.
Yes.
So we could pay that off and then that could reduce our budget by 50,000 if we're, but we'll have it paid off. We'll still have 30,000 left over somewhere. I'm
But
guessing.
there's nothing to pay off. It's just a savings
Well,
goal.
yeah, I know, but then we can just take that away from our budget. So we're trying to get that. What is the fund called?
Emergency fund.
It is.
Yeah.
Um,
The cash savings
I would
account.
just keep
Right.
building it.
huh?
I would just keep accumulating, even if we do hit our goal. I get what you're saying though,
Yeah,
working the budget.
There's-
Right.
And even after we do meet our goal, doesn't mean like we wouldn't ever put any more money into it. Like as a council, we could get together and say we would reduce the amount instead of 15,000 and we could just continue to,
Mhm.
continue to have it grow and let the interest rate grow on it. But, maybe not contribute the 15,000.
we
We'll
can-
we'll have some options regarding
Oh, it's
taking,
15,000 we're contributing each year.
it's,
I was just, we still have lots of.
There-
roads
there's
we've got to
on-
do.
on the use of those funds, we can't put them in, it explicitly states in the
Oh,
rules of the
But
use
we
of the
can
fund, you
do
can't put them in a
infrastructure.
rainy day fund.
but we can do infrastructure and that
Okay.
includes roads.
Yeah.
Right,
Um,
but we can't,
yeah, we'll have another meeting on those projects.
okay.
Yeah, that money's still not here, but it should be any day. They have
Yeah.
that money.
Okay.
Oh, I just had another question about sales tax, though, is that in those COVID years, it looks like the sales tax revenue was higher. But then like now it's a little lower, but in those higher years, we were still paying 20% of our sales tax to pay off the comptroller as we are doing now.
Yes. So the sales tax isn't lower. It's overall, it's lower within the general fund because we are now accounting for the restricted use of some of those sales tax funds for street and road maintenance only outside of the general fund. That way we're not commingling restricted use funds with discretionary funds.
Mhm.
Because we've made that separation to fence those off, that's why you're seeing the number go down. If you combine the two funds, if you add the street and roads back in, we'll actually see it, over $100,000 over the last.
Oh,
If you put 20% on top of the 79 and 78, you'd be above the 94.
Of the comptroller money or the road money?
yeah.
What the city collects.
Okay. Yeah,
We're paying
I
20% to the comptroller, right?
Yeah, paying 20% to the roads.
20% to roads. Okay.
As a shout out, there's a upcoming election on that street and roads, in the November election that we previously, this city council previously called that.
Oh, that's right.
The 0.5% or whatever it was,
The,
0.4 something,
yeah, it's
Oh,
1/4%.
1/4%.
The 20% that's being diverted, of sales tax that's being diverted to pay off
Comptroller.
the comptroller fees, is not included as part of the budget because that's done prior to the city
Getting there.
realizing those revenues.
They take it out automatically and then they give us what's left over.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Sharon, I wanted to ask, in this, I know that whenever we pass for the fire department, for the volunteer fire department, to be able to get some money.
I'm talking about the ballot measure that was
Yes.
used for the
The
ESD.
Does that last, that's just indefinite?
I don't know. We'd have to look into that. I know with our street and roads fund that's used on sales tax side, that is restricted, I believe, every 4 or 5 years. I'd have to go back and look. I think it's 5. So
But with
It's
the,
possible that they're in a similar situation, or because it's an emergency services district, it could operate differently where that revenue is permanent unless it's rescinded by the voters or something.
but like where that amount is, like we as a city entity wouldn't have that information about how much was actually paid to them, how much.
No, because that fund, those funds are not managed. They're basically the county level. So the county might have information on what's being collected and reserved for their use.
Collected through Caldwell County.
Right, yeah.
And is that that's not part of the sales tax percentage?
I think,
It's a property
I
tax.
believe it's a property tax increase.
Okay, so
Is that?
It might.
We'll have to
Well,
find out.
We can take the question and see what we can find, but I do know that it's not part of the municipal budget in any way.
See, I was just wondering because I know that our voters they had to vote on it.
Yeah.
And, I was just wondering if it was reflected anywhere.
No, so to kind of go back on the property taxes, these rates that we're talking about are only the municipal government rates. You're still going to have the county rates, the independent school district rates, the farm to market road rates, the ESD rates, and all of that. So we're only a small portion of the total amount of taxes that are paid by a resident. All right. Unless there's any more questions on revenues, we'll go into expenses. You'll
Did you
see,
go over the franchise fees and all that?
yeah, the franchise fees, that's a per customer rate that's charged to the different franchisees like
Blue Bonnet?
Blue Bonnet, Spectrum, Frontier and such. So
Garbage.
those are really consistent. And then the miscellaneous general fund, if you have further questions on those, we can drill down to what those itches and niches are, but
No, that's
it's
fine.
really like, it's credit card usage fees and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. All right, the general fund expenses. So you'll see in our payroll expenses, a substantial increase from prior years. And by quite a large amount. So where that's going is our police department staffing is increased by a third based off of historical staffing levels. So the most that we've had in quite a long time. And then there's also a 3% cost of living adjustment for city employees that starts the first pay period of the new fiscal year for those employees with a minimum of 6 months of time of service. So
so that's been calculated in this month.
that's what
In
this
this budget.
And it's at the first of the fiscal year this time?
Yeah, the city has contracted with some city officers, and in their contract, it has it to begin the fiscal year, and so
Raises are coming up.
to move it, want to move it forward by a few months. It also provides 3%, frankly, isn't a whole lot in the inflationary market situation we're in now. By moving it forward, helps realize that benefit sooner. Even though it's not very much, it helps some. And so they're not waiting until January to see that increase. And then you have the other categories of operating expenses and contractual services there.
How come the operating expenses went down 20,000 from the green to the,
Well, we really haven't. It's the operating expenses on a budgets and actuals is in line with 2020 actuals and 2021 actuals, what the 2023 budget is. The 2022 projected amounts are very inflated for a few reasons. We had some litigation activities that we engaged in with our city attorney that increased some of our attorney fees for this year. And probably the biggest is IT costs that we realized as we started to store recorded video of the city council meetings and the data management backup costs that I think were unreasonable.
Yes.
And that we've been taking action of late to try to reduce, but that's a big, so we're budgeting that we'll have those costs back under control for this next year.
Okay, thank you.
So we talked a little about street and road maintenance and repair. There's 3 charts on this slide. So starting at the left, you'll see the amount that is funded out of the general fund. In the middle of the slide, you'll see the amount that's funded out of the special revenue fund. And then at the end of the day, what most people care about is what's the combined spending by Martindale on street and road maintenance. The total budgeted spending level for this year is in line with the 2019 and 2020 spending of $42,000 combined between the general fund and special revenue fund. Here on the middle and left-hand part of the screen, you see how that's split out from their different sources, funding sources. Any questions on the street and road? General.
Well, so Lockhart, really quick, Lockhart Street wasn't paid out of either of those funds then, or?
No, that's paid out of our capital improvement. We define what a capital improvement is within our financial policies, and it qualified under those definitions to be a capital improvement project, and so it's funded out of that source.
Yeah, because I saw it was so low and
We needed a lot of cash.
This is really pothole,
Potholes and,
just maintenance.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is pothole repair, and tree limb removal.
How about street signs? Like if a street sign gets run over by a car and all that,
Yeah, that would be included.
like the big street sign on the corner there of the curve.
Or the stop sign at the corner of Quail Run, Northwestern Road that gets run over every 6 months.
You saw the street sign that the guy hit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and like insurance might pay for that or whatever.
It's a tech stop though. No.
Oh, that's on TxDOT, I see. Okay.
All right. Other items of interest within the general fund, you'll see election expenses. We're budgeting for $8,000 in election expenses this last year. In the past, we've seen those expenses as high as $13,000, $14,000. We don't expect those to be that high because we're partnering with the county as much as possible for our election needs to reduce costs.
we also have reduced costs because we only have one polling, right?
That might have a little bit of a cost impact in terms of the
Yeah,
complexity
okay.
with balloting and stuff might have some marginal
Well, we
effect on
didn't
that.
have an election in May.
Yeah, you'll see that there's no 2022 cost for election expenses, which helped cover some of those other costs that we see
Right.
in our other areas that were higher last year. The parks expenses, we've been making a marked increase in our investment in the parks in terms of maintenance between 2018 and this proposed budget. This proposed budget is the highest it's ever been. And the attorney fees, you'll see there that somewhat budgeted at an elevated level as we expect to consider code enforcement issues that may require our attorney services.
So the IT
Yeah,
budget is almost half
yeah. So
because of some of the
we're trying,
mailing y'all have done. with
we're trying to
backups and
bend that cost curve back down to where it should be. And I think we're going to be able to achieve that in a large way. And then we also having consistency in our staffing should reduce a lot of the health ticket calls and issues that we had. We spent a few $1,000s in just health tickets related to onboarding the entire police department, frankly, and other staff. So getting consistency in our staffing should cut some, and then we're also taking other data management techniques to reduce our immediate costs. And then we're going to look at doing some market research on other service providers that can provide a more equitable cost
Like
for data
maintaining
management.
backups and stuff.
Okay, so the library, I think before my term, they decided upon a 3-year budget for the library based on the same projected amount for 3 years.
I don't know if,
Not the
no,
same.
it was a 3-year contract.
The
And
first year of the contract was
18,
18, and the last 2 years are 21.
Okay. So then this 2023 would be the last year of the 3-year
For this
allocations
contract, yeah.
for that current contract.
yeah, and I'll look at the contract expiration date, but I think it's going to come up next summer at some point for consideration.
But they're already fully funded through the 2023 fiscal year anyway.
But they're in the budget to pay that contract. yes.
Well, not fully funded, but the projected amount that was designated to give to the library.
The
As-
contracted, the amount that's listed in the contract they operate off a different fiscal year, but for our fiscal year 23, that we are budgeting to meet those contract
Obligations.
requirements.
And then like, we don't even know if, when another contract is presented, if the amount is gonna go up, if it's gonna be higher. I mean, we don't have those factors yet, so.
Yeah, we just have to worry about this budget.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to see because I saw it change and I remember now and she confirmed it saying it was 18 and then it went up to 21 and 21 and then that's it. Okay.
Getting into the utility fund, this is a summary. At the top, you have the revenue. At the bottom, you have expenses, and you'll see that this is budgeted at a balanced budget for fiscal year 23. And we'll get into each of those items on the following slides. So utility fund revenues for water services, wastewater services, you'll see listed there. The proposed budget on this one, you'll see that our projections for 22 are over 100,000. Our 2023 proposed budget is probably a conservative number. We may generate more revenues than what's listed here as we get into some of the rate setting for this next year based off of usage. But for now, or for the purpose of the budgeting and being conservative on the revenue side, we use the existing historical, if you will, customer data in terms of rate setting, of how rates would be applied to higher customer usage. Solid waste revenue, this is in effect, in our contracts for solid waste services, a lot of this funding is a pass-through to that contract. The city collects some additional fees for solid waste services for the administration of that utility. So that's why those revenues are so high. Most of that gets passed through, but we do collect and keep and fund our utility, our staff.
I like comparing it, how much we.
Yeah, we'll get to that on the next slide. We can flip back and back.
Revenue, yeah, what revenue you get compared to.
And then you'll have the miscellaneous utility fund, and then we do have a budget item for negative revenues write-off for uncollectibles. If we have a renter that moves out, we have planned ability that if absolutely necessary, we're not going to bust our budget by writing that off.
That's what that 1% is?
It's actually a negative number, so, it's really a negative
Oh,
revenue.
negative in parentheses.
Any questions on that? Expenses, so you want to flip between one to the next. So solid waste, we collected 230, or proposed budget is 213,000 in revenue. Our solid waste expenses, 166. So you can see the difference there on what the city collects and the, pure operating revenue standpoint from that. What it's used for is payroll reimbursements and operating expense reimbursement. So on the payroll side for utility clerks, our budget is 28,000, and our operating expenses are at 48,000. And we can, if you have questions on those, we can go into how those are calculated.
That's to maintain the pump and the mow the field or those
Actually,
kinds of expenses?
No, so those are going to, the operating expenses is a reimbursement back to the general fund. So when we send out the bills and we have to pay for the postage, we pay that check, if you will, out of the general fund, and then we reimburse ourselves through the operating expense reimbursement from the utility fund to the general fund to keep the general fund afloat for having all those outlets. And so what we do is 15% of utility fund revenues go to the general fund as a transfer to reimburse for those, office related expenses.
Okay.
The expenses that you're discussing, mowing and irrigating the treatment plant thing. So they're going to be the wastewater system operations and repair line items. And we have that budgeted at $68,000 this next year. Solid waste expenses, you'll see it, are fairly flat as far as the budget goes, and that's because we're using some historical customer data. The
Expenses come from the TDS.
Yeah, so that's a bill we get from our service provider.
I wonder if that projected budget for the next year is actually enough, considering that we have problems with the lift station and the antiquated system of the wastewater system. I mean, I don't know how we're gonna actually keep up with modernization of the city and new sewer hookups, and then expect to only say that we're gonna spend 68,000 when that's $100,000 behind what we really need.
I would agree with you. The wastewater system operations and repair budget, ideally, I would like to see that, like you said, probably closer to 100,000. That way we could make preventative maintenance activities and other things, so we could just break it, fix it, kind of stuff. However, Councilmember Bunker mentioned before, the revenues that we're collecting from the American Recovery Plan Act, the federal government funds, if you will, that come in. We're going to try to get ahead of a lot of those preventative maintenance activities using those funds.
Switch some of that over to that. Okay, Yeah, that's-
It's best when it's spent.
yeah, because that's not very much more
I
from
agree.
66 to 68. That just isn't enough.
We'll have to take some from the parks.
No, I just let that roll.
Yeah.
That's
Come
nothing.
on now.
That's nothing compared to one.
I'm just kidding, Sam. Calm
All
down.
right, move on.
It rolls downhill, Sam.
No, I'm talking expenses.
Uh-huh,
We
yeah.
we all have expenses.
All right. That's it.
Yeah.
Questions?
Oh, no, did we already do the revenue?
Yeah.
For that.
So, there's any questions, as the slide says, it's budget season. So, it would be the question, otherwise, well, huh?
Really, your favorite?
I mean, I get to play with spreadsheets, it gets me excited. Yeah. So,
Well, can you give us just a brief, as you did last year, sort of a fiscal year projection, looking at the crystal ball, what you've discovered through your work and your findings and your research? What can we work with now? What's your advice?
yeah, so I think overall, the IT costs and the wastewater services costs are going to be those two budget items that are going to keep me up at night. And where there's the greatest risk of cost overruns. And that's something we're going to have to try to manage. On another note on street and road maintenance, we've tried a few different methods to tackle those maintenance activities. You know, we've tried to use some pre-bagged, pallet delivered patch hole or pothole repair patches. That's worked to some degree. We tried to use an aggregate spray-in. That's worked. It's prevented some cracking, but you'll see that they've kind of sunk down a little bit. We've used some cold mix to fill the holes. And a lot of area, Lockhart Street, we made a capital improvement to resurface that road. A lot of these fixes are just barely keeping the lights on kind of stuff. We're not going to get ahead of that curve without substantial investment in the roads. And the city at this point won't have that capacity for quite some time, unfortunately. Doing the resurfacing activities are, a short-term fix. I would not consider those to be especially a long fix, but they do provide some reprieve from the bumpy roads. Northwest River Road, that project the next 2 years is going to modernize a section of our roads, which will help some, frequent flooding areas, even on small rainstorms, which will be an improvement. But when we look in Hobson Ranch and Butterfly Meadows, those are newer neighborhoods comparatively. However, those road systems themselves are starting to fail. And we're going to need to look at ways to get ahead of that and try to extend the life of those roads, because it'd be very difficult to have those roads degrade to the point of, say, the far end of Northwest River Road where it meets Highway 80 or without the maintenance burden becoming even greater than what it is today, even after those investments. Yes.
The election for the 1%
Mm-hmm.
in the November election, and that's to pay for what kind of road repair?
Basically, it's street and road maintenance. Where you want to see that most frequently is pothole repairs, or minor resurfacing. We did some minor resurfacing on the entrance to the Hobson Ranch. So the question was, how much is brought in on our street road? So let's see.
It's about 24,000.
So it's about 20,000. Did I not include the budget for? Looks like I missed it. What I can do is I'll pull up the actual draft budget that's available online. If you go to our website, you'll be able to find the published draft budget. We'll have each of the hard numbers that we presented tonight in the presentation. And on the revenue for street roads maintenance, last year we collected just over $23,000.
Oh,
So
that's
it's
sales.
that from the sales tax. So it's a pretty significant amount. And then we just gotta make sure that we pay for it and we stay on top of it. I think there's might be some opportunities to do some repair work as we close out the fiscal year. I think we still have some available budget to do some street maintenance. Possibly doing some larger resurfacing areas, or coming in with some tar and trying to seal some of the cracks that we have in those neighborhoods.
But I need to major.
Probably, we're not going to have that ability using either the general fund or the special revenue fund. And we spent a lot out of our capital improvement fund savings that we've built up over the last 5 or 6 years. So, yeah, basically all of it. So we're going to have to start saving up that account again to do something at that scale. We're hoping maybe there's some leftover material after the Northwest Road repair that we can just go ahead and spread out for a real cheap cost. Like, hey, well, we have it, might as well just smooth it out further.
Yeah.
Spread the peanut butter down the road. So we'll see.
So I know we have a certain amount for the parks and we have a certain amount for the library, but I don't know if we talk about accreditation for the library. Maybe that would be too long of a discussion to get into that. But how much is the city actually involved other than, I mean, we just give the money and then they become accredited as a result of that? Or what impact does us do? Because I think I would love to see more of a mutual fostering of understanding and blending things together about us and that.
So-
And make sure that we get kudos for having it as the city finance library partially then.
So the library can be structured in many different ways. You can have it as part of the city department, which comes with certain benefits and risks. You can have it be independent like it is now, that the city funds through a contract, or you can have, library districts or other, organizational.
Taxing.
In terms of how they manage the revenues, expenses, right now, the city and the library is independent from the city, and we have a contractual relationship with them that we provide funding in return for library services to the community. So I would view that as purely a transactional thing. Now, the funding is important to the library because it helps keep their accreditation. And
And it's a bonus for the city for activities and children's activities and all that.
that's the
Wireless,
that's the
there's a great
the second, that's one of the motivating factors why the city would enter into a contract to have a library, is to sustain that service within the community.
Mhm. Great asset, yes.
Right, so as it relates to working jointly with the city having an involvement in the library operations, I don't know if that would be appropriate.
Well, there's no necessity for it, really.
Well,
At this point.
they're a separate organization. If there are certain things requirements that the city has as we get into their next contract, that'll be negotiated next summer. We can look at those things, but I would look at it the city has a contract with an organization to provide library services to the community, is how I view the relationship.
Okay,
And if they're providing library services, then
what is it?
Because the library is accredited because of Bill's donation to the library. When you get accredited, we're able to go after grants. And that pays for a lot of free things here in Mortondale,
Mhm.
like a lot of children's
Mhm.
activities. They're like health activities.
Mhm.
The big van that's parked out here for the eye checkup.
Yeah,
And the children that went through there, even the adults that went through there, got free eyeglasses.
Mhm.
Now, if y'all ever had to pay for your own eyeglasses, they're restricted, those,
wow.
that's free for the citizens market. Well, you.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
so there is a return on investment. Some of it is tangible.
Mhm. I got my
So is
blood
the-
pressure checked.
Some of it is tangible, some of it is intangible, right?
Yes.
So like, it's easy to count the dollars and cents. I think as a policy setting perspective, as a budget is really a policy document. You boil it down, that's the priorities for my recommendation for the city council would be to continue to fund that as a policy for the provision of library services within our community because of those services that they're able to provide with those funds and as a result of their accreditation and ability to get additional grants. There's some return on investment that I know that they've come in and the new library director came and presented 6-7 months ago on what some of that data was. I think there's a benefit there.
Okay, good. And then I just had, sorry, one other question. This wastewater treatment plant is really crucial to us as a city. How are we going to get more money, or, I mean, we may have to get developers to help us fix it, or, I mean, we really need to get out of these evaporative ponds and, or maybe increase them, but how are we gonna get more money to fund trying to fix that plant?
Well, the good news is the plant itself is fully operational. And we don't have any concern that it's not functioning as designed or permitted under TCEQ. So, but there's nothing that does have limited capacity. That's true. Some of it's topography related, some of it's, the size of our irrigation fields is the largest limiting factor. That's a substantial capital improvement that would have to be funded through either a loan that is able to be written off under, kind of a quasi grant program that exists with the Texas Water Development Board. Those are highly competitive. The city could pursue those things. And there's a number of other negotiations, financing mechanisms that the city could undertake to look at expanding wastewater services. But a lot of it is going to require outside money. It's not something that the city's going to be able to afford to burden itself with anytime soon. We don't have the tax base to go out and issue debt for it. We don't have the cash on hand to buy a new one. As it comes to system expansions, those who need the expansion would be the ones who would need to pay for it. Our current facility does not have a lot of expansion capacity left in it because of just the physical structures and topography of where it's located. So
200 homes, maybe 300 or something.
between 100 and 200 homes is probably what we could add. But as you get closer to that 100, 200 number, you start running into TCEQ permitting requirements and submitting plans of what you intend to do to address additional capacity needs as you.
We would have to go get increased capacity from the state on that.
Okay. Got to work that out. That's going to be a big eye.
Can y'all hear me?
This coming year.
Hello?
Adrian, are there any public comments?
Chat.
I didn't have a chance to fill out.
Oh,
It's public.
this is a public meeting.
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, it's on this public hearing on the budget is what we're talking about right here.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, that'll be in a few minutes. So
Hello?
if there are no
Can you hear me?
public comments,
Yeah.
then do I have to have a motion
anyone
to
hear me?
close this meeting?
Close the public hearing,
To
And
close the
we'll
public hearing?
open a special city council meeting.
I don't need a motion. Okay, so we're going to close the public hearing and it is 7:34. Oops. 34. And so we will convene the special city council meeting. And now we are open for public comments. Mhm.
You're on again. This is something that just came up to the library. And the library's not really doing this, we're just hosting the organization. This is called Community Conversation, and this is gonna be next Tuesday, 7/13, 6 to 7:30. And depends on the number of people we're gonna meet in the library or in the building next door to the Crooks Building. And this is, says to join us for the community conversation to discuss what health and wellness issues the community is facing. And all participants will be entered into a gift card raffle. And this is from a girl named Melissa at the Icon Church. And again, we have partnered with St. David's to do some other health and wellness things. This is a completely separate organization, but they knew since we had done some health and wellness, they came to us to ask us to do this. And anyway, if you'd be interested to sit down and discuss with the facilitator what health and wellness issues Martindale needs, if you know anybody in your church that you might want to pass it along, this is next Tuesday from 6 to 7:30.
That's the 13th.
Yeah, 13th. And you're entered into a gift card raffle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you could leave it with Adrian.
I have a question about that event, and it's just because of like the population that I serve and that I work with, but will that event also be in Spanish? Will you have a translator there? I would say like any event, it's very important to also have it accessible to those who speak another language other than just English. I think that that's very important. That way it's
Ours
accessible.
is in Spanish.
Good, so hopefully there'll be a translator there.
Right, yeah. Good point. All right. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to new business. 4.1, discussion and action to adopt a budget for the fiscal year beginning, excuse me, October 1st, 2022 and ending September 30th, 2023. It says authorizing certain adjustments to the budget, which we will have for discussion if there are any adjustments, and including the procedural provisions.
So this, at this point, we're just looking for a motion to approve the budget.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve this ordinance. There it is. Approve ordinance 2022-09-08-01, and ordinance of the city of Martindale, Texas, adopting a budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022 and ending September 30th, 2023, authorizing certain adjustments to the budget and including procedural provisions.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion?
Do you have any adjustments?
Do you have
And
any
what are
adjustments?
procedural provisions?
Just passing the budget, I believe.
So there's some other things on there. So the ordinance itself, so the ordinance itself describes how adjustments are made throughout the course of the year. Then that includes the other procedural items.
Talks about how, you know, how you sign all those transfer forms I do all the time. So,
So we can get money where it's supposed to go. Okay, if there's no further discussion, Sam, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Nick, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, so the motion carries. Okay, and then we'll move on to 4.2. Discussion action to adopt an ordinance of the city of an ordinance of the city of Martindale, Texas, setting a tax rate and levying taxes for the support and use of the municipal government for 2023.
I'd like to make a motion to accept ordinance number 2023-09-08-02, an ordinance of the city of Martindale setting a tax rate and levying taxes for the support and the use of the municipal government for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022 and ending November 30th, 2023, and including procedural provisions. Official enough?
you state which rate they're approving.
And for this one, we'll have to take a recorded vote for each member for the record.
Okay, so I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay,
601.
so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
That rate is 0.3601. Correct?
Yes.
Is was it that one?
Yeah, so the
I thought it was 3.4.
voter approved rate.
It's the voter approval rate.
Yeah, see, that doesn't make sense. It sounds like you still have to take it up for vote.
It's, well,
When you
the,
say it that way,
yeah,
it's confusing to me, but
What-
I'm
what
easily
would-
confused.
Oh, yeah, 3.3601.
well, I noticed that we have a mandatory, change that we make in section 1. In words,
Well,
it says
Yeah.
4262. That needs to be removed. It needs to say
Oh.
36. And
Oh, I'm glad you
Okay,
caught
should I
that.
make that in the motion to correct that?
yes, I would.
I'd like to amend the motion to include a correction for section 1, that the tax rate is corrected from
36 and 1/10 cents.
42 and 62 tenths to 36 and
One.
10.
100.
36.01.
Yeah.
We got it.
Could,
0.601.
could I see that first slide that you had with the graph of the
Yeah.
tax? Okay.
So let me see, just to make sure.
Okay.
Good eye.
Okay, so it is 0.36, the proposed rate, and what the voter approved rate. Okay.
So
But you have to
should this
reset
have 36.01 like that in that?
So
Or should it just say point?
It's the same,
one.
Same thing?
it's the same thing. $800.
Were the numbers right on that graph on the left side, the little box? Let me see if that was,
Yeah. it says
that little
proposed,
box
right
there.
See, it says proposed under.
point,
3601.
That's the
but
proposed
it's
rate.
0.42, no.
That's
The-
a voter.
That's the known.
Oh, yeah.
rate.
Vote.
Okay, so 0.360 per $100. Okay, that was
That's
right.
voter approved without having to go through an election.
So just the numerical amount that was on the ordinance was wrong.
Yeah, kind of like you write a check, you have to spell it out, the spelled out portion of the
Yeah.
ordinance did not match the parenthetical of that
Right.
dollar figure. So we just needed to make that change.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a parentheses.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Sam, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Sonia, how do you vote?
Yes.
Now, do we have to say the exact amount? Yeah,
I
yes, I
think we
approve
got
the.
it. I think we got it.
I think we got it.
Okay, so the motion carries.
All right.
And then we just need a motion to adjourn.
Well,
Make a motion.
I had a question though. I don't know if we could do it at this meeting, or when do we refresh our brains about the next upcoming dates, like the 12th or the 15th or whatever? We have some dates
We
coming
can
up.
Talk about that after the meeting.
After the adjournment, then we would.
Yeah.
talk about
Either
it.
way,
Or we could do it
Check
now.
with the city clerk after the meeting.
Okay,
That way we're saying, we don't bear off the agenda.
okay.
I make a motion to end our meeting at 7:44.
okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And all in favor, please say aye. All right, the meeting is adjourned at 7:45.
Nobody opposed?